Good morning and welcome to Z Radio, presented by QCSportsInferno.com. This is Mike Ackerman. I will be your host for this hour. This is kind of something we're just starting here today. If you've listened to Corey and I at night, we decided we're going to take it to the mornings too, and really kind of go through what's been happening the day or what's happened the day before. Something we're going to just go through and go through our process is how we how we update QCSportsInferno.com and the stories that we talk about and that we post that we see are important every day. If you want to participate, you can call in. We're taking calls. It's 309-524-5558. Again, that's 309-524-5558. But right now, I think there's nothing more important to talk about than the NFL. And for this area, of course, it starts with the Bears and the Packers. And there's two teams now that are going in completely opposite directions. It's kind of funny because if you would have talked to everybody after Thanksgiving night, you would have thought that the Bears were moving in the right direction and the Packers were moving in the wrong direction. Well, that quickly changed, didn't it? The Packers haven't lost since then, and the Bears haven't won since then. And as a Bears fan, it's been frustrating as we turn on our phone number there so people can start to dial in. But, yeah, as a Bears fan, it's been frustrating to watch. And the bad part for the Bears is it's come in unexpected ways, the losses. Probably the guy who's been their best, most consistent player over the last 10 years, Robbie Gould, hasn't lost the games for him, but he certainly hasn't been there as a key contributor. That's for darn sure. Last week he missed a game-winning 36-yard field goal, and yesterday he misses. That was a tough. I mean, anytime you're going over 45 yards or so, that's a tough field goal, especially outdoor in the rain. But he obviously, after missing 4 field goals earlier in the year, left. He pushed this one to the right. He was obviously trying to hit it to the right, and he thought it would come back, and he didn't. I thought last week the field goal he missed, he had pressure coming from the right side, and he just yanked it. I don't think it was anything other than he just yanked it. But yesterday he obviously kicked the ball right, hoping it would come back left, and it didn't. So if you can't count on your most consistent player, I'm not sure what you can count on the rest of the season. I still say this is a good thing. You don't want the Bears to win right now. It's if you're looking back, you got to look at this as just like you looked at it as a Cubs for the Cubs a few years ago. Winning doesn't bring you being an average team, being a 75-win team, an 80-win team doesn't bring you Chris Bryant. Being a 75, 80-win team doesn't bring you Kyle Schwarber. It brings you whoever was in the middle of that first round, and they aren't in the big leagues right now. And that's exactly the way you got to look at it as a Bears fan. This team isn't good enough to compete in the playoffs. They're not. They aren't going to win they aren't going to win the NFL title. They probably wouldn't even win a playoff game. So losing right now for them, as frustrating as it is probably the best thing for them. Because you need to move up in the draft. If you looked at before last week or before this week's loss, they were drafting somewhere right in the middle, somewhere around 15. After yesterday's loss, they're somewhere between 8 and 10. That's what you want if you're the Bears right now. You want to be somewhere. You want to keep moving up that draft board. As bad as it is, you got you're at Minnesota next week, loss. At Tampa Bay the following week, loss. Home to Detroit, hopefully a loss. And really, you start looking at Tampa Bay and at Detroit. If they play the way they did the 2 previous weeks, they could win those games. I mean, they really could. They could win those games. But As a Bears fan, I don't want him to. I want him with as high a draft pick as they possibly can get. Because they need somebody who can get to the quarterback. Because when you start looking at yesterday's the production from players from yesterday, Willie Young and Lamar Houston, who were left for dead at the beginning of the season. Not most people, but a lot of people thought they were going to get cut. Both of them. Willie Young didn't play hardly at all the first couple games. He was asking for a trade to a team that played a 4-3. Lamar Houston was coming off the ACL surgery. He wasn't a prototypical 4 or 3-4 player. And neither of them helped at all at the beginning of the season. Yesterday, they were their best players. Except for the play that Willie Young didn't contain on the edge and let Kirk Cousins score. Him and Kyle Fuller both. But those two are the only two that could put pressure on the quarterback on a consistent basis. Sam Acho was the third player who had the most playing time from a defensive standpoint yesterday. He was released at the beginning of the season. He wasn't even on the roster. So that's what you're dealing with right now from a defensive standpoint. Offensively, I don't think you don't need to add much offensively to this team. Jeremy Langford's going to be a good running back in the NFL for years to come. He is. He's a good football player. He's actually Matt Forte-ish when Matt Forte started. That's Jeremy Langford. You don't need another running back. The question you had before, and you're just not going to be able to answer it now, is how good is Kevin White? He's not going to play this year. Had they won these last two games and they were looking at the playoffs, I think you may have seen Kevin White play. From all sounds of it, sounds like he's healthy now. He's just got to shake off the ring rust, and he's got to get confidence in his leg, and that's healthy. And somebody who's gone through knee surgery, that takes a long time to be confident in that your leg can take the hits. But you don't know that now. So now you've got Alshon Jeffrey going to be a free agent next year. You're going to have to pay him. And once you do, and then Kevin White comes in next week, and if Kevin White is as good as what everybody thinks he can be, I mean, even now in practices, it sounds like he's just a freak athletically. If he's as good as what everybody thinks he can be, and then you add in Marquise Wilson, who I think is a good football player, and then you'll have Eddie Royal still next year, you got the best wide receiving core in the league. Bar none. Best wide receiving core in the league. Offensive line has improved throughout the year. They still, every once in a while, we saw it yesterday. Kyle Long just let Jay Cutler get his head taken off. He'll be better next year at tackle, though, than he is this year. Let's hope, anyways. He was one of the elite guards in the league. And moving him out to tackle was going to be it was going to take some time. And it has, but he's still done pretty well for the most part. Hronis Grasu at center, he's going to be there for a while. So really, you got your center and your right tackle are taken care of, and really the rest of the line hasn't done that bad. But every once in a while, Cutler drops back and he has no time. I mean, there's a complete whiff by somebody every once in a while. As far as running the ball, you start looking at yesterday what Washington had to work with. Um, we've seen it in some other games too. I think the running attack has come and has done well for two reasons. One, they run a lot. So every once in a while you're going to bust one or you're going to get a 10 or 15-yard run. Just law of averages. And two, I think Jeremy Langford and Matt Forte are good running backs. It's too bad that they can't be there for the next couple years together. I just don't see there's any way that the Bears are going to re-sign Matt Forte. I wish they could because I think him and Langford are a good 1-2 combination. And they're not that thunder and lightning type of running back situation where one's a pounder and one is a scat back or third down back. They both are. They're very similar in their running styles. Both are good receivers. Langford's probably a tad faster at this point in his career. Forte can find the holes a little bit better. So I wish those two would be there together for a couple years, but that's not going to happen. I'll tell you who I like, who's done well, is Zach Miller. He's really been a surprise coming out here these last few weeks. And I think the emergence of Miller at tight end is going to signify the end of the Martellus Bennett era in Chicago. It's kind of funny when you start looking and hearing and seeing things about Bennett. The talk has always been he's a little bit of a loose cannon, but his teammates love him. He's been productive. So I'm not sure what has happened here this year, but he certainly it certainly seems like the end is coming for his time in Chicago. I know he's got a decent sized cap number next year that will provide them a lot of savings if they let him go, and if you have Zach Miller, who looks like as long as he can stay healthy. That's been his big problem in the league. He was out of the league for a couple of years because he couldn't stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, he's not quite as big as Bennett. He's probably not as good as blocker, but my goodness, he can definitely catch the ball, and he seems to be a little bit faster than what Martellus Bennett is. So that's a good pickup that came out of nowhere. That seems like Theo Epstein picking up Jason Hamill signing. Just pick him up out of nowhere like he did a couple years ago. And he turns out to be a good player that helps bring back an Addison Russell in return. That's the way Miller is. It seems like he bought him low, and he certainly benefited. The team has certainly benefited from that. Now the question is can he keep that going next year? I think one person we won't see with the team, and we hit off of him right off the bat, is Robbie Gould. He's missed 5 field goals for the year now, which we talked about, and he makes $4.1 million in 2016. If they cut him by June 1st, they save $2.9 million in salary cap. That's a big savings for a field goal kicker, especially for a field goal kicker who's not going to win the game for you. The only reason you're paying the field goal kicker that much money, you can get anybody out there. You could get anybody out there, an average kicker, to go out there and kick your extra points and make field goals within 40 yards. Although Golden missed one last week. You can pay them close to the league minimum. You don't need to pay somebody $4.1 million to go out there and miss field goals. That's a luxury no team can afford. Nobody. So then that brings you to Jay Cutler. Cutler played a good game yesterday. I'm not a Jay Cutler fan. I think he had a few games in a row there where he was playing really well, which was very un-Cutler-like. Or let me put it this way. Cutler was bringing them back in the fourth quarter. Now, as me and Corey have debated time after time after time, what you also forget sometimes in those games is that he also threw an interception early in the game to give the other team field goal position, or to even give the other team a touchdown. He threw a pick six. And had it not been for those, you wouldn't have been in that situation. For example, Detroit, pick six. You end up losing by a field goal late or a touchdown late, whatever it was. You lost late. Last week, same thing. People want to blame it on Robbie Gould. Cutler throws an interception. Gives their team points. It's always something with the guy. Always. He always makes a mistake. Not always. More often than not, he makes a mistake at some point in the game that costs you points. Whether you're going down to score and he throws a pick in the red zone, or you're in you're in your own territory and he throws a pick and the other team gets great field goal position, or the other team gets a pick six off of immediately. It's always something. And you just can't have that out of your quarterback. You just can't. Your quarterback's got to be there to put you in the best possible position to win every game. Does he have probably more physical ability than everybody else in the league? Yep. I like the fact that he can run a little bit. I like the fact that he can make some throws off his back foot. I know people don't like that. I don't think that the throws off his back foot causes many interceptions. That is what people think. I think it's more his head trying to him trying to rush it and get rid of the ball at times, or try and sneak it into an area where he shouldn't be trying to sneak it into, is what causes him troubles. It's not him throwing the ball off his back foot. But the problem is, and Corey has pointed this out before, and I agree with him, what do you do? If you don't have Cutler, who are you going to have? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. I know that I don't think the Bears will ever win a Super Bowl with Jay Cutler's quarterback. He is what he is now. Corey will go and talk about, Andy Dalton or somebody that's a little bit younger and them throwing interceptions. Or he, I think even once he tried to compare him to Eli. Eli Manning's got 2 Super Bowls. You can't compare Jay Cutler to Eli Manning. Andy Dalton's 5-6 years younger. Jay Cutler's 31, 32 years old. He is what he is. You're not going to change him at this point in time. He's going to make mistakes. If you give him one game, yeah, he can win it, just like he did on Thanksgiving night. You give him that one game, he can win it. But when you start talking about the playoffs and he's got to be perfect 3 or 4 games in a row, he hasn't shown the ability to stay perfect 3 or 4 games in a row. And that's what you have to do to win a Super Bowl. The popular one to talk about is Rex Grossman, and that's a great example of the same type of football player. He was good in the playoffs, wasn't good in the Super Bowl. Couldn't be perfect 3 games in a row. And that's what you have to do to win in the playoffs. You have to be perfect 3 games in a row. If you can't be perfect 3 games in a row, then your team's never going to win, and you shouldn't be in there. But if you're the Bears, who the heck else are you going to have play? There's not a quarterback coming out in this year's draft that is a surefire NFL quarterback. There just isn't. There's not a high. I don't believe there is a high draft pick that is worthy of a quarterback this year. At the beginning of the season, it was the quarterback from California. Then you had Connor Cook from Michigan State was a popular thought. Indiana, I like Indiana's quarterback, but he's not a high draft choice. He's a 3rd, 4th, 5th round draft choice. He was a popular thought. Now the name that's coming up is Paxton Lynch from Memphis, junior quarterback. Guy's 6'7", 245. But he completes 69% of his passes for 3,600 yards this year. 28 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. Last year he went 22-9. So he's got great stats, but who's he played this year? It's hard to tell when you don't play anybody. Missouri State, Kansas, who might be the worst team in Division I football history, Bowling Green, Cincinnati, South Florida. Ole Miss is a legit big SEC team. And against Ole Miss, he went 39 for 53, 384, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Nice part is here looking at his stats. The one thing I will say, it looks like he can run a little bit. One game he had 11 attempts for 52 yards. Another game he had 13 for 43. I mean, I have not seen this team play. They must run a read option because he's had quite a few games where he's had 8, 13, 7, 7, 8, 9, 11, 7, 6 rushing attempts. So he must have a little bit of athletic ability, maybe a little Brock Osweiler-ish. But he certainly doesn't seem like he's somebody who's ready to play right now in the NFL. So you're stuck with Jay Cutler. Now the good news is, I believe after this season you can start to move away from his contract and not have it hurt you on the cap. I just don't see it happening now. You're dooming the franchise. You're dooming the franchise unless you can find somebody right now to play quarterback. When you have options that you're going to have next year with Jeremy Langford, Kevin White, Alshon Jeffrey, Eddie Royal, Marquise Wilson, Zach Miller, you got to have somebody in there who's ready to score right now. And you're going to have to deal with them series where he puts you behind the 8 ball and he's going to give up that 6-7 points a game. You're just going to have to deal with it. If you want to start to win, and I think the Bears can win sooner rather than later. They got to fix their defense. There's 2 things they got to do. They got to fix their defense. The cornerbacks yesterday, they play so far off the ball. They're just giving teams 7-8 yards a pop. It's like watching the Iowa Hawkeye defense, except for the fact that they're not nearly as disciplined as the Hawkeyes are. And they'll give up the big play, whereas Iowa usually doesn't give up the big play. And then their team will make a mistake at some point. Well, I'm not sure you can do that in the NFL. In college, you can wait for that team to make a mistake. I'm not sure you can do that unless Jay Cutler's the quarterback. I'm not sure you can do that in the NFL and just wait for the team to make a mistake. I think in the NFL, you got to put more pressure on the other team, and you got to force them to make a mistake instead of wait for them to jump off sides, wait for them to hold, wait for them to run a wrong route, wait for the quarterback to make a bad throw. You got to make them do that in the NFL. Just don't wait for it. And I think the Bears are waiting for the other team to make a mistake. The cushion they were giving players yesterday was insane. Insane. And I don't know if it's Fangio doesn't have confidence in the secondary to play up. That he doesn't think the safeties can cover for the cornerbacks if they get beat. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's got to be fixed because you can't give that much time for people to. You can't give that much time for people. Whoa, and I'm watching something on TV right now. They just showed it. A Paris teacher stabbed by ISIS sympathizer, manhunt underway. And they had video of this guy going off. He must have ran away because it looked like he got something knocked him down. That was kind of spooky looking. Anyway, so that's one. You got to first and foremost, you got to fix the defense. You've got to fix the defense. You can't just allow teams to move up and down the field. And we've seen that in the fourth quarter too, where they give too much pressure, they give too much cushion, they don't get pressure on the quarterback, and an NFL quarterback is going to pick you apart. They're going to absolutely pick you apart if you do that. The other thing, and it's a mentality, and I don't know if it's Adam Gase, who won't be with the team next year. He'll be an NFL coach next year, NFL head coach next year. But I don't know if it's Gase or if it's John Fox. And it could be just a philosophy all the way around, which permeates into the defense too. It could be a matter of him taking what he does with the defense and also adding to the offense. They are so conservative. So conservative. It drives me nuts. You saw it the last few. You've seen it. He's cost the Bears at least 2 to 3 games with his conservative nature. One of them being Detroit, where they got a lead and then they just completely put the ball in the freezer. It was like watching Iowa play. He completely put the ball in the freezer. I got news for you. The defense isn't good enough to put the ball in the freezer. It's not. I know I'm going to speak out of both sides of my mouth here, but the best thing you can do is, and I believe, and me and Corey have debated this, I believe when he does that, is it just his nature, or is it his lack of confidence in Cutler? I think it's his lack of confidence in Cutler. He won't throw the ball once they get the lead. He won't do it. At the beginning of the game yesterday, how many times did they throw the ball in the first half? And I guarantee you it wasn't many until they went on that last drive at the end of the first half. I guarantee you it wasn't many until they went on that last drive at the end of the first half yesterday. There's no way. Actually, I think I can find it here. Let's see. Because it sure seemed like they went, let's see. Let's go play by play here. Well, Detroit got the ball first and went right downfield. Chicago went 5 plays. Matt Forte, right guard, or off right guard. Jay Cutler pass. Jay Cutler sacked. Matt Forte, right tackle. Jeremy Langford, right end. And so 2 short passes. And then on the next possession, Jeremy Langford, left end. Jay Cutler, right tackle. Jeremy Langford, right guard. Jay Cutler pass incomplete. Jay Cutler pass short. Jay Cutler pass short. Langford left guard. Cutler pass incomplete. Cutler pass short. And then Cutler was sacked. So you can see, even when they did throw it, it was all short. Once they started to move the ball, that's when they started moving the ball later because he started throwing the ball downfield. And another area I agree with Corey on here is get Cutler out of the pocket. They talked about it several times yesterday during the game that a lot of the Bears' best offense came from schoolyard football. So let that work to your advantage. Roll Cutler out. Don't let him sit back. Let him sit back there and be a target for the defense, because he can run. Roll him out. Let him make plays. Don't let him sit back in the pocket and let him make decisions at that point. Let him get out of the pocket. Give him a little bit more time. Because the nice part about Cutler, he does have the arm. If he has to throw back to the other side of the field, he can do it. So to me, there's 2 things that the Bears need to do. They need to make sure that they're not being so conservative on offense. You can't be that conservative and win in the NFL anymore. I agree, and I've talked about it before, that you win from the lines and then you move out from there. But just as I talked about last week before the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten championship game, you can't, by any stretch of the imagination, sit back and run the ball 60% of the time anymore. Defenses are too smart. They have too many. There's too many analytics that will say, here's when they run, here's when they don't run. They like to run to this side. There's too much of that anymore. And if you prove that you're going to run the ball, they're going to put 9 guys up in the box, and they're going to stop you, which is exactly what I would do. So, yes, I do believe you win from the lines out, but you can't be so conservative. In the NFL in particular, you have to attack more. Now, does that mean I think you throw the ball 70% of the time? No. But you throw the ball on first down. You can run some fake. You can do some things to help your offense. But right now, it's run right, run left, run right, run left. Even yesterday, when they got to second and 25, I believe, you saw you saw a run play, and then you saw a screen on third down. They weren't even going to try and get the first down. Run the screen on second down. They got 10 yards out of it, and then give yourself at least a chance. Or here's one thing I don't get is, it's been this way, and it's for most teams. You got a second and 27. Jay Cutler can throw the ball 65 yards in the air. Roll him out. Let him throw the ball 65 yards in the air. Even if they intercept it, just play defense on it. It's better than a punt. So don't be conservative. Don't be as conservative. Let me put it that way. You either have confidence in your players or you don't. If you don't have confidence, which I don't think Fox does, which leads me to point number 2 then, you need a better defense. Or you need better players for your defense. You need guys who can get to the quarterback. You need cornerbacks who you feel comfortable with defending man on man. Right now you don't have it. I think Kyle Fuller could be a safety, in my opinion. But he's not a man-on-man cover guy. So don't try and make him into a man-on-man cover guy. Don't put him in them situations. Don't put him in a spot where he's not that good. He was drafted. He would be good in a Lovie Smith defense. Where he's counted on to play zone. He doesn't have to worry about getting deep because he's always got safety help over the top for the most part. That's where Kyle Fuller would be good. But playing man on man doesn't seem to be his forte right now. So the Bears moved to 5-8. They're out of playoff contention. And you had the Packers move to 9-4 with a victory over the Cowboys yesterday, 28-7 win. They now have a 1-game lead over Minnesota, who they'll play one more time. The big news yesterday wasn't really as much that they won, because the Cowboys are terrible. They should have won. The big news is that McCarthy took over the play calling again. It had been talked about for weeks. I don't know how big of a deal it was, because I don't like the Packers, but they scored 28 points. Again, though, the Packers suck, or the Cowboys suck, so I don't know how big of a deal that is. I think the one thing that you took, or that you can take from it, is Lacy ran for 124 yards, and James Starks scored twice. So, when you talk about a thunder and lightning type of thing, the Packers certainly have that with those two. I can tell you this, though. Eddie Lacy better get in shape this offseason, because he looks like he's a couple biscuits away from being out of the league. That's a big dude at running back. But he's getting to the point where he might be a little too big. When you can see your belly coming out from underneath your shirt, your belly's a little too big to play running back in the NFL. And Eddie Lacy is getting to that point. But 435 total yards, 29 first downs. It was only a matter of time before Rodgers started to slow down a little bit. And I don't think it's Aaron Rodgers' fault. He doesn't have the receivers there anymore. You can't keep losing receiver after receiver after receiver and expect to be good. If Aaron Rodgers had the Bears receivers, if he had Alshon Jeffrey, Aaron Rodgers would probably break records. I've said this for a couple of years now. If you put, in particular, last year when the Bears were a little more healthy, and the year before even, when they were in the playoffs, if you took Aaron Rodgers with all the offensive weapons they had, with Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey and Matt Forte and Martellus Bennett, if you put him on the Bears team, you took Jake Cutler and put him on the Packers, the Bears would have won a Super Bowl. I firmly believe that. Let me put it this way. They would have had a Super Bowl type of offense. They would have had a juggernaut offense. I don't think they had the defense to do it, but their offense would have been good enough. I can tell you that. Jake Cutler would have thrown for 50 touchdowns. Or, I'm sorry. Aaron Rodgers would throw 50 touchdowns. And I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a jagbag. But the guy's a good quarterback with just a sensitivity on his height, apparently. So the Packers are moving in the right direction. You knew they would. They started off the season hot. Then they hit a little turbulence in the middle. They're going to come back out now the rest of the season. They'll be fine the rest of the season. Aaron Rodgers is too good not to be. I don't know what the big deal is of McCarthy running or calling the plays. I don't know how much of an effect that'll have on them the rest of the season. But they certainly looked a lot better yesterday. Sometimes a single play can have an effect on a team, and I think that Hail Mary against Detroit certainly did for Green Bay. It got them back in the right direction. When you start looking at the rest of their schedule, though, they got 3 games left. The rest of their schedule is no joke. They got to go to Oakland, to Arizona, and then home on January 3rd. That could be a nice cold game. Home on January 3rd against Minnesota, and that could be for the division. That could be for the division title. And that could be a big game because that could whether you I don't know if they're going to have if either team will be able to take home field advantage or get a bye at that point in time. Where are we at in the NFL? Yeah, you get 2 byes right now. Carolina's definitely going to get a bye. Arizona's 11-2, so really then the game at Arizona becomes a big deal if you can get them to lose a couple more times. The one thing you don't want, though, is because right now as it sits, you would have Washington at 6-7 would be in. But Green Bay would face looks like maybe Minnesota in the playoffs. Here's what I wouldn't want if I was Green Bay. I wouldn't want a matchup with Seattle in the first round or so in the playoffs. Because Seattle's starting to play good football right now. They're back to 8-5. Seattle's playing good football. You don't want to face them right away. I'll tell you what, though, and here's what I don't get is are the Carolina Panthers the most disrespected 13-0 team in the history of football? It sure seems like it to me. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. They're 13-0. And people, I think if the playoffs started today, the Panthers would not be the favorites in the NFC. I guarantee it. If the playoffs started today, you would look at, and this is like when we talk about Iowa in college football. This is what we talk about, or this is kind of the same thing. You got the blue bloods here. I think if the playoffs started today, you'd have Seattle and Green Bay would be your favorites. Right, wrong, or indifferent, Seattle and Green Bay would be your favorites in the NFC. I could even see to a point where you would look at Arizona, and people could see Arizona being a favorite. Now, when you start looking at the Falcons' schedule, or not the Falcons, I'm sorry, the Panthers' schedule, they haven't played a lot of good teams, which is kind of crazy for for an NFL team to say that. But the Jaguars suck. Texans suck. Saints suck. Buccaneers suck. They did beat Seattle 27-23, and that was at Seattle. But I guarantee you right now, if they played again, Seattle would be the favorite team. The Eagles suck. The Colts suck. They beat Packers too. They beat both the teams that they'd be behind. And they had the Packers killed before they let their foot off the pedal. They had them killed. And I think the most impressive part to me is, and this is what kind of caught my eye, is they beat Atlanta yesterday 38-0. Atlanta was a 500 team going into that game, and they beat them 38-0. They beat them like Alabama would beat North Texas. I mean, they just embarrassed an NFL franchise. In an NFL franchise that offensively, anyway, is no joke. When you've got Matt Ryan as your quarterback, you always have a chance. They're no joke. Cam Newton has got 28 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions. So they're no joke. But if the playoffs started today, mark my word, Green Bay and Seattle would be the favorites to win the NFC. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. And I think the biggest reason is because Carolina's just not flashy. They don't have a bunch of all-pros on the team, especially on offense. Although Cam Newton may be the NFL MVP this year. Other NFL news, Cincinnati, stick a fork in him. Andy Dalton looks like he's going to be out the rest of the season with a broken thumb on his throwing hand. It was kind of funny because I think the Bengals have a good team. I was about to say the Reds. I think the Bengals have a good team, and I think they had a chance to do well. They probably don't now, but I thought it was funny because A.J. McCarron came out yesterday and said, well, Tom Brady was in my spot at one point in time. And people kind of made fun of him and ripped him. And I don't get it. He wasn't comparing himself to Tom Brady. He wasn't saying he is Tom Brady. He was saying Tom Brady was in his shoes at one point in time, which he was. Tom Brady came in, although a little bit earlier in the season, and took over for Drew Bledsoe in New England back in the early 2000s. Is a couple, 2, 3, 4 years into the league, 2 years into the league maybe, and he led him to a Super Bowl. And then the legend of Tom Brady grew from there. He was in the exact same shoes. I don't know why people are laughing at A.J. McCarron for saying that. He's saying something that is absolutely 100% true. He didn't say anything that isn't true. He's in the same shoes as what Tom Brady was in. Coming in for a guy who's playing really well. Not a legend. Andy Dalton's not a legend. Drew Bledsoe wasn't a legend. But they're good football players. They're all-pro type of players. On a good football team that looks like it has a good chance to make the playoffs. And you're coming in to play for them. Tell me something there that's not accurate. Because if there's something there that's not accurate, I don't see it. He's in the same boat that Tom Brady was in when Tom Brady broke in. Also yesterday, people want to rip him. They want to talk about his off-field antics, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Johnny Manziel had a good game. He took Cleveland over San Francisco 24-10. Jay Cutler couldn't do that. Johnny Manziel was 21 for 31 for 270 yards and a touchdown. Say what you want about the guy, and don't know that I would have him on my team, not because of what he does on the field, because I don't know how much he puts in off the field. At first, when he got suspended there a week or two ago, I didn't know the whole story. And I thought, hold on. You're benching the guy for going home and going out to a bar on his bye week? That seems a little extreme. But it wasn't that. It was because he lied about it and tried to get other people to lie about it. That's what scares me. That's what scares the crap out of me. If the guy had any clue what he was doing off the field, I think physically he can do it. But he has no clue what he's doing off the field. None. And I don't know if I'd want to take a risk on him. I saw something here, and tomorrow we're only going to go about an hour today just to get things started. But I saw, and tomorrow we'll kick off with some Iowa talk, Iowa basketball. Then we'll move into some football. But I did see here a few minutes ago on Twitter, this will be what we do a lot of mornings, is we'll go through and we'll see what's happening with the news. Did I just see it? NBA power rankings are out. I am not a fan of where the Bulls are going right now. It's boring basketball. He went from trying to go from a defensive team to being an offensive team. And they're not a good offensive team, mostly because their point guard. He's trying to copy what he had at Iowa State and what Golden State is doing. Problem is he's got a point guard, and Derrick Rose is just not very good. I think the problem I have with Derrick Rose is, one, he's not very good anymore, and two, he just doesn't seem to be a good guy. And I don't know him, but it doesn't seem like he's focused on the right things. I mean, he's got sex scandals. He's got some and again, I don't care what you got going on in your personal life, but are you focused on basketball when you're doing that stuff? And right now, he needs to be focused on basketball. You know, I talked about it before. Me and Corey talked about it. He had talked about how he was he lives out in California in the off season. Well, where's your son then? So you want to parade him out in front of everybody when the playoffs come. Are you with him all summer? But he talked about how he was working out all summer and blah, 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 blah. Well, basically what it was, when he woke his ass up at about 11 o'clock, he said he'd go work out for a couple hours. Now, when you compare that to what Jimmy Butler said he did in the summer, he said he was up by 6 or 7. He'd get a gym workout in as far as weightlifting, that sort of workout. Then he would go and do basketball stuff a few hours later for a couple, 2, 3 hours, and then go back and get some more workout in the evening. Now you tell me who's working harder to become a good basketball player. Seemed pretty obvious to me at that point in time. I just don't think the guy is focused on basketball. Well, he already talked about, and it wasn't even a question that he had. It wasn't even something that somebody asked him a pointed question about free agency. And he talked about he's getting ready for free agency in 2 years. He's getting paid. They're handing out a lot of money in the league, and he wants to get some of it. Because apparently he hasn't stolen enough from his team. He has stolen enough from his team. And I think if the Bears, or not the Bears, I'm sorry, if the Bulls could get rid of him for a first round pick right now, they would do it in a heartbeat. Especially if they thought it could be a high first round pick. If they thought it could be a high first round pick, I think they'd do it in a heartbeat. All right, so I'm looking at some. I'm looking at some power rankings. I believe this is the Journal Sentinel. This is Purdue, in the Purdue neck of the woods. And I don't know that I would disagree with this. And we'll talk again about some of it tomorrow. Michigan State's number 1 in the Big Ten basketball power rankings. Purdue 2, Maryland 3, Iowa 4, Indiana 5, Michigan 6, Northwestern 7, Wisconsin 8, Nebraska 9, Illinois 10, Ohio State 11, Penn State 12, Minnesota 13, and Rutgers 14. Man, and it's kind of funny when you start looking at this. When I started looking at the Big Ten in the spring after the season was over with, I had Iowa about 8th or 9th. I had Illinois in front of them. I had Wisconsin in front of them. I had Michigan in front of them. I had Indiana in front of them. I think Indiana still could get up there. I think Michigan could still get up there. I think it's a pretty obvious top 3 in the league, unlike last year when you had Wisconsin, who was clearly the best team in the league. You have Michigan State, Purdue, and Maryland, who I think are going to scrap it out for the top 3 in the league. I think those 3 are going to be in a battle all year long. Then I think you've got Iowa, Indiana, Michigan, who are your next 3. They're going to be battling it out for 4, 5, and 6. Northwestern, I'm not sold on yet. Even at 8-1, I'm not sold on. Wisconsin obviously was put up. I had them up there early in the year, just because they're Wisconsin. Bo Ryan, and I think that's why everybody else had them up there. Bo Ryan always has a good team. Always. I don't think he's not going to get his top 4 finish this year, though. Nebraska has some good ball players. They could sneak a couple upsets in. Illinois has had health and people having to transfer and kick people off the team. Illinois could be a mess. Ohio State, I'm reading here, Buckeyes are only 4 and 5 and have used only one player who isn't a freshman or sophomore. You're not going to win in the Big Ten like that. Unless you're Kentucky, you're not going to win the Big Ten like that. So that's where the Big Ten sits right now. Tomorrow, we'll go over that way more in depth. Tomorrow's going to be a Hawkeye day. We're going to talk. I'm going to preview tomorrow night's MAC action, some local sports, and then we'll also talk Hawkeye basketball, Big Ten Big Ten basketball. So it's been a good experience. It's been a good time. First time out doing this in the morning. We'll just do an hour today, and then we'll see where it takes us. We're planning on doing at least an hour every Monday at 8 o'clock, or every weekday at 8 o'clock. And if we go longer, we'll go longer. But for now, we'll call it a day, and we will see. Me and Corey will be on the air live tonight. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.